Today's guest on Tete-a-Tete was a professional child actor. Now, if you've watched a few tete-a-tetes, you'll know that quite a few of the actors that have sat in the other chair have been interested in acting since the time they were children. But this is the first time that we've had a person who's been a professional child actor. So we'll hear about how different that has been. Meredith Fuller, however, wasn't content with being a child actor. At age 9, she decided that she wanted to be a psychologist. And she did. In fact, Meredith became a psychologist who worked in private practice, often counselling people from the entertainment industry, as well as people in other walks of life. The other thing that we'll be talking to Meredith about is a more recent development in her career. Meredith has established a theatre company. Now, when people talk about having a home theatre, generally what they mean is they've got a big telly and a couple of comfy chairs and maybe some surround sound. Meredith has a 40-seat theatre upstairs in her house. Welcome, Meredith. It's lovely to have you here today.
I'm so pleased about this. I enjoy the series because you dig deeper, and that means there's so much more helpful information for people.
Great, thank you, and I'm really looking forward to talking to you today. But let's start out with your child acting. You were a professional child actor. How did that happen?
I came from a chaotic childhood, a background where my father had left. We were in abject poverty. It was before they had any pensions for women. My mother was at home caring for my Down syndrome great aunt and my grandmother who had Alzheimer's, and no money. Ironically, I didn't let any of that bother me, and I was always singing and dancing and entertaining myself from when I was very tiny. And we were in Maya one day, and I was just standing there singing and dancing in front of the mirror, and I was so oblivious, but I had these hordes of people watching me, and Athol Smith and Bambi Smith saw me, and I was 3.5, and they said, "We'll take her."
Oh my God.
So I became a professional model. And from that, I was invited to do acting. I won a scholarship to go to the National Theatre, and so I did my 3 years there. And very soon after doing that, I began professionally working with people like Irene Mitchell, Paul Caro, doing a lot of St Martin's, doing a lot of television extra work, and that was actually how we survived as a family. Those things weren't well paid, but it was enough to get us through until later in the 60s when my mother could actually obtain some sort of pension. Back then you also had a lot more flexibility with school. I was really lucky. I had a very supportive primary school, so I didn't go to school much. I was working a lot. So I've literally worked professionally since I was 4 years old.
Meredith, that's amazing. What was it like being a child actor working in the industry and supporting your family? Did you have a sense that there was a lot on your shoulders?
I was a very serious child, but I was also a very performing child. So I loved it. I did what I wanted to do. My mother was very shy, quiet and retiring, and I was the one who was happy to do all of this. She wasn't a typical stage mother. So I just thought, this is great, I'm going to work. Lots of people, I enjoyed it. And to me, it was such a great contrast between the difficult experience we had living at home that I loved it. So that drove a lot of my interests. And when I was probably in about grade 1, I decided I wanted to write. So I just decided I'd start a newspaper at school, and then by grade 2 I decided that we should have plays that I'd put on after lunch, and my teachers were fantastic. So I was working professionally acting. I was able to do a lot of writing at school and not go very much. So that was fantastic. How I decided to work as a psychologist was another ironic story. After I'd done the youth area, I won the scholarship to do the senior classes at National Theatre. So I was the youngest and the smallest in the class, and there was a particular improv. Everyone's going to see a psychiatrist, and you had to come up with really zany problems as you came to the psychiatrist and talked about your problems. Of course, none of the actors wanted to be the psychiatrist. That was boring. They all wanted to be these amazing people. So I was happy to sit there being a psychiatrist. And when this happened, I had an epiphany. As each came to me and sat down and talked about their problems, and I was being wise and counsel, I had a sense of, this is my destiny. So from that point onwards, I decided if I became a psychologist, I could do everything I loved: write, act, counsel, help, understand the world. That's what I'd do.
So you were not attending school very much, but obviously you were keeping up with your studies.
I was lucky. I was really bright.
Yeah.
So that was another useful thing to have.
Yeah. When you were working as a child actor and supporting the family, did you have a manager? Did you have someone looking after your
Yes, I had an agent. Helen Violaris was my agent for all the stills work and the other work that occurred with St Martin's, etc. I didn't have an agent. They just kept offering me roles.
Right. That's very fortunate.
Very. And when I was starting high school, I realised that if I wanted to be a psychologist, I had to actually turn up and get the marks.
Yep.
And so I stopped doing a lot of the professional acting. I still did modelling because that was much easier to negotiate. And I just did amateur theatre because, again, you can do that after hours.
Yeah.
Doing my year 12, I had a scholarship to go to Rusden, which is the drama dance. I wanted to be a psychologist, so I actually did that course instead, and ironically ended up working at Rusden where I was the careers counsellor. So I was physically located next to the drama dance department, so I spent over 11 years working with those students as well as the other students and staff.
How do you think being a child actor and living in that hot house and having that responsibility for the family, how did that shape you as an adult?
I was in a play called The Cavern, and it's Jean Aoui had a play within a play. And Norman Kay was the playwright commenting on the play. I remembered watching all the actors in all of these things, and I remember thinking, I'd much rather be writing the dialogue, and hang on a minute, it's really good if you can direct what people are doing. I think temperamentally I'm more suited to that than acting anyway. So I was already thinking about how could this shape what I did in the future, and I was always very future focused, so I could imagine myself doing all sorts of things. I guess working with a range of people in the theatre helped me to create my own career. My mother, because of caring for our other relatives in the home, was very big on social justice, and she also was upset that there weren't any halfway houses, so she created a halfway house in our house. So we always had about 17 people camped all over the place, and you know, it was just chaos, but it was happy chaos. And then when we did a lot of amateur theatre work, we just have a lot of people staying from that, and so I just learnt that I enjoyed the fact that you can do all sorts of things, and so I believe I learnt a lot about self-awareness, knowing who you are. I guess my childhood gave me the opportunity to skill up really in an unusual skill set.
Yeah, which is wonderful. And so you went into counselling, and certainly for the first 11 years, a lot of the people I think you were counselling were people in the entertainment industry. So what did you learn about the specific issues of actors and directors and writers and so on?
When you're an actor, you don't appreciate the complexity of the other roles.
Yeah.
You certainly don't appreciate how much they have to care for the team, work individually and work collectively, and manage to make it a safe enough place for people. I thought that was fascinating. And I noticed how a lot of people don't understand why decisions are made.
Having done a lot of work in business myself, I think that film work or any of the entertainment arts are incredibly collective. I mean, it is a hierarchical environment, but it is so dependent on every single cog in the wheel in a way that I don't think many other types of work are. Yeah.
The best people were humble, aware of the other, respected the different roles everyone had, and treated everyone as equals. They wanted to bring out the best in each other. And so there was a sense of ensemble that was drilled into me from a very early age. A great actor, a great director treated everyone with respect. They understood that we're all so interdependent on each other. And the actors who were high maintenance weren't cast as often. People who have a generosity of spirit have a much longer lifespan in these career areas. The other thing I was aware of, absolutely terrifying it is. It doesn't matter how much of a star you are. Anxiety, stage fright, nerves, need for approval, need for feedback, it's always there. And for mental health and financial health, people who have a number of roles in their life have opportunities to cope with whatever will happen. So the more roles you have, the more you can foster a resilience, because there will be times when there just isn't any work.
Yeah. That is so interesting, Meredith, because so many of the people that I've been interviewing are doing a range of different things. The last person that we spoke to started out as an actor, is now running a production company. You know, everybody does a whole range of things. And I had been thinking, well, that's really because you have to, there's not that much work. But you're right, it is absolutely also about resilience. It absolutely is. And it is a form of self-care.
There will be some actors and directors and musicians who are very focused on the one thing, and they'll really specialise their whole life in that. It's like a must do. And there are others who will say, there will be times in my life when I'll bring the acting up. There'll be other times I might need to parent, I might need to put effort into further study, or I might need to raise capital so that I can run my own theatre company. And they're happy to have a number of roles intersect. A number of people will find they'll start off doing their great love early years and then find there'll be a trough, go back to it much later. People like Jackie Weaver are a fantastic example, and she's just going so strongly. And so the message is, it's never too late. You never had your day is always there. Never give up on dreams, but maybe tweak them a little bit. If there aren't the opportunities, create them. Seeing a number of professional actors in film, television, who didn't have any work anymore, and they were so lost, and they had not trained in anything else, and they didn't really want to do anything else, but the work just wasn't there anymore. And again, a sociological comment on the paucity of roles for women and the paucity of interesting roles for women. And I'm really excited that we're doing a lot more now to increase the range and depth. So we've got fabulous new writing, fabulous new independent theatre coming along, brilliant things happening in film and television, becoming entrepreneurial and doing anything. Women in their 50s, 60s and 70s, even 80s are doing fabulously well. And a lot of it's because they're fantastic at working with other people and working in groups. Having some form of reference, people who've known you over a very long period of time, as well as people who know you in different contexts, helps ground you.
Can I take you back to the question of self-care, and particularly for actors and people in the industry and back of camera as well? What are your tips for people to really look after themselves? You might be working in a very difficult and deep role where it can be hard to let go, particularly if you're doing 8 performances a week for a run. What are your tips?
There are different stages, and you warm up, you do the body of work, you need to cool down, you do need to have a sense of closure, and you do need to make sure that when people are finished, they're robust enough to leave the building, leave the floor, leave that role, leave the theatre, and they're intact enough. So this is a responsibility that we have to ourselves individually, but it's also a responsibility of the producers, the directors, your colleagues, everyone, to make sure. So when you've done some work, it's important that there's an opportunity for you to process what you've done. If you're directing, it's great when there can be 2 of you. One can observe while the other's facilitating, and you can see how deeply into a process someone is, and you can be mindful, and that can be flagged. You can make sure there's enough time to do some exercises.
What might be some of the exercises?
Okay, so a very simple thing. If you're working in theatre and you've finished your role, or you've been doing some very intense training work, to come back to yourself, have a mirror and go and stand in front of the mirror and spend some time engaging with the self in the mirror. I am seeing myself as an adult. I am this age. This is me. I'm in this world. My interior world is interior, and now I'm bringing myself out into current time, current space. It's a very quick way of bringing you back.
That's great. I've never heard that one before.
Thank
you for that.
These are some things we develop to make sure that you're safe enough, because you have to go out, maybe drive a car.
Yes.
Also, it's important to have a resting space. So with our therapy practice, we have a room. It's called a waiting room, but it's also a resting room. After you've done some pretty heavy therapy work, you may not be ready to walk out. Sometimes you can't even walk. Theatres that have a space where you can do that, it's important.
And not only have that space, but also make it very clear that after you've done the work, you are expected to go and use that, so you're actually creating a habit.
Yes. One of the things about this creative work is we're far more able to notice each other and what's going on, and it's of great value if a colleague can say, I've just noticed that you're very flushed, or I've noticed you're struggling to breathe properly, or I've noticed that your body's holding. How are you doing? Can I sit with you for a while? And vice versa. So there's some acknowledgement. There's some processing that needs to be both cognitive and physical. Great actors often will have a muse, a counsellor, a therapist, a coach, a loved family member, and they will just sit and debrief with that person on a regular basis. And that way they're just checking in with themselves, the work, the impact it's had. There's a lot of body techniques that we can use. 3 things to bring you back: movement, breath and sound. When you have gone into those deep, dark places and you need to come back, you need to move. If you are stuck in that same physicality, you're holding it. So movement, our bodies need to move away from, and we need to breathe properly. Breath will bring you back. It's like, I'm having a panic attack, breathe. Sound, expressing. We need to say something, do something that will use those 3 factors. That's why the mirror technique of seeing yourself in the mirror, you'll smile. We often will naturally smile looking at ourselves, so we're actually shifting our whole physiology. We often carry painful emotion here. We concave ourselves. By looking in the mirror, it actually encourages to move up, and as we move up, we'll access the best part of ourselves. As a general rule, a lot of work we're seeing now will include some extra consultants. So for example, there's Penny McDonald, who does a lot of Alexander technique And as a former actor, she's very, very switched on to the body, our breathing, how we inhabit the character and how we can move in and out of the character. And having access to people like Penny is fantastic. The other factor is have something else you do after something particularly difficult. I would imagine with some people their roles are pretty traumatic. When you leave for the night or when you leave the situation, have already booked, I'm going to go and have lunch with my partner, my friend, a trusted colleague, to have a coffee, who will just give me an anchor. Most actors, directors, theatre people, creatives, will have something that's special to them. It might be a piece of jewellery, it could be a pen, an item of clothing, something that embodies all that's good and true and fantastic in themselves, and by having that with them, it's just it's like a touch piece. It reminds them, I'm more than this. There's more to me, and I'm going to access that power.
That's great, Meredith. Those are such simple and practical tips. That's fantastic. Thank you so much. A lot of people, I think, will really get a lot out of that.
Whatever the strategies are that work for you, remember to employ them. Often what can happen is we can get quite blasé. Oh, look, been there, done that, do this 1,000 times, no problem. But we do get a problem if you don't de-roll.
Absolutely. Let's shift and talk now about your theatre company and when did you start that? Why? You said that you always thought you would want to come back to it. How did it make its way back into your life, and what are you doing?
With the neo-work times that we're moving into, people need to change. One constant, we'll always need a creatives. Theatre, music, entertainment, anything with our bodies, particularly in this digital age. So a safe bet is ironic when for so many years everyone groaned and said, oh no, I don't want children who want to do creative arts, I just want lawyers and doctors and economists.
Yeah.
But now, it's our time. It's our time because we are able to hunt in packs. We can collapse teams, put together teams, and reinvent ourselves. Parallel to that, we have such a change in the world of work. A lot of people now are out of the workforce. There's nothing they can do because they can't do their old roles. And we're finding a lot of men and women are coming to extras work or becoming involved in amateur theatre or independent theatre. Wonderful, but who's going to give them a go? What can you do? I'm concerned that similarly we've got a lot of very young people. They can't afford to do very expensive courses. They can't get into uni. How are they going to learn? So by coupling people with expertise and experience and new people, whether they're old, young, male, female, we can all function and look after each other. So you get a whole lot of people together and you say, okay, I know you've never been a stage manager before. I know this is the first piece you've written. I know you haven't acted much before. I know you don't know about how to use a camera, but let's work with each other and let's help each other. And that's what I wanted to do. I also was particularly shocked about the lack of female roles for older women. That was awful. Two colleagues and I started one theatre group, so we've got a few projects. So one theatre group we have is Glam Productions, and that's with Anna Della Rocca and Gary Wall. So the three of us created an opportunity for people of varying talents to get together and play and try things. My theatre and film group with Brian is more of a, okay, we're the nucleus and we're an entity where people can come accompany us. We actually bought our house and turned it into what we needed, which was a film studio, a theatre. We've been able to do something pretty unique, and that is make a profit doing indie theatre, because if I'm writing it, you don't have to pay for rights. If I'm providing the venue, we don't have to pay for venue. And what are the two most expensive things? We all offer to work for nothing. I had some colleagues there the other day. They needed a place where they could make some film. Well, they can just come and spend the morning doing something, and they haven't got the money to pay for a venue. they can use our place, and in return, you know, they'll come and say, help us move equipment or something. So there's that sense of give and take, and that's another thing about creatives. We all understand that what goes around comes around, and it's about working with people who you like and you get along with, and that's about safety and trust and respect. That way, when we are mining the deeper work, there is enough safety and respect that it's okay. It's damaging if there isn't enough safety and respect. So you're just very careful if you don't have that. And that takes time. And so you see this ensemble idea catching.
Absolutely, yeah. And you see that ensemble in many successful productions. You look at your Clint Eastwood model, where he uses the same people over and over again, and there are many others in that sort of mould. And it does work. It does work so well. It's a matter of finding your tribe.
Everyone that I've worked with, I will learn from them. We will learn from each other, and I have to be reflective in order to do that. I learn more from my mistakes, so I like to push myself, and I'll need to learn. I understand what I can't do very well, and I respect people who can do those things very well. So we also have to forget about wanting to be the star. We're only as good as our weakest link. So I have a fantastic woman called Davida Graham, who's got a fantastic business called Shrinking Violets. Now, she's so young, but a great passion for doing this makeup work. We treat her with great respect because without her, we're lost. The graphic designer who helps us with our posters, the front of house, everybody feeds in and everyone's valued. And so when we're doing profit share, that's reflected in how we make decisions. One of the themes of any creative work is dealing with rejection. There is no guarantee that you will be selected, and you could actually be the best person for that role, but you're not selected. You don't have the right look, you don't fit with the person you need to play with, there's a different vision that the director has and you're not part of that. So how do you stay robust? One of the things for people is to keep going. You keep doing. Okay, I was close, I was shortlisted. That's a great thing. To be able to ask for feedback. One of the things about GLAM and our theatre production, we like to give feedback to people who have not been selected. Okay, this is how we saw you, this is why we've chosen the other people, this is what you might do to develop, and hey, we'd still like you to be involved, come and keep in touch. That's treating other people with respect.
Yes, it's very important and so rarely done. Now, I went to see Conjugated Stalking, your recent production, in your beautiful home, and you had it set up in a way that I found quite unusual and intriguing. It was a salon. You set it up like a French salon in the 1920s. Can you talk about why you've decided to put on your productions in that way?
For that particular production, I did that. Other productions we'll do more traditionally, or we might hire different spaces. For example, I really like the Butterfly Club, and that's been a terrific venue for doing things. With this particular play, it was a very psychological play, and it was very intense, and it was comedic and yet a mystery. We set it up where the audience was also lit, and they were very close, so we had that sense of we're all in this together and we can really feel what's going on. We've evolved over the years a following like theatre groups do. People will come, so you enable them to feel comfortable into a smaller space. We invite people to come a little early, introduce them around so they know who's there, try and make this a networking opportunity. We've always got a broad age range so that we're modelling this thing about everyone's got great value. It's not an age-related issue. Let's explore that. And then when we go upstairs, we invite people to reflect, because later we'll talk about it. So after the play or the workshop or the discussion, we have a Q&A. Then we'll go downstairs and have supper so that people can interact with the actors and other audience, because they've had an experience together. There's something to talk about. And that's important too, because I guess we're all sick of small talk. people would like meaningful engagement. So this gives meaningful engagement, makes connections with other potential people that they might like to work with. And so, for example, I have a mentor who's 25 years old. So I was very fortunate to win a competition and be a writer in residence in 2018 for Burning House, which does a lot of great theatre and particularly has a Shakespearean orientation and a very serious orientation, and they do big works. And Robert Mark Johnson has been a wonderful advisor, dramaturge, person who I feel very excited working with, and there's a sense that we can just play, and I think having that space, that open space to play is important. So by creating more of a salon experience for all sorts of people, we can get people engaged. A good example of that, which I'm so thrilled about, 10 years ago Brian hired the Astor Theatre and made a film, and we asked all our friends and colleagues to be extras, and everybody works for nothing and we feed them. And a friend of ours brought her 2 daughters. One of the daughters, that was her first opportunity of doing anything filmic. She loved that experience so much, decided, I want to pursue this career. Got into New York, has been living there for 5 years, doing it tough as you do.
Yeah. Yep.
And she's now off Broadway. Soon she'll be on Broadway.
That's fantastic.
And those little moments in lives where you can affect other people's opportunities, it's just magic. The first time, for example, when we were casting a play, I like taking the unexpected because I can see something in someone, and everyone's got ability and talent. Usually they're just in the wrong space, so if you put them where they're going to shine, it's great. But we had 50 people audition for our lead role. We had people who had won awards doing it, we had people who had done it several times, who knew the script. We had wonderful people. We had so many people, I could have cast 50. Anna and Gary and I were blown away by a very young woman. She was extraordinary, and we got her to do it. And I said to Madeline, you have that quality. You're going to be around the world. You're amazing. Well, unfortunately, she was so amazing that she got an offer 4 weeks before our play was due to be on, which took her to Hong Kong, America, earning a fortune. She is a globe-trotting, amazing success. Now, we could say, that's a bit tragic, I'm very disappointed. Or we could say, good on you, my dear. And you know what? We're going to find someone else. We found a replacement who was every bit as fabulous, a different interpretation, but this woman had to learn. She was pretty well on stage for 3 hours. She had to learn an incredible amount of work. She had to come into an existing group, and she had to pull off a performance with only 4 weeks. She was brilliant. So I think it's about seeing everything that goes wrong as an opportunity and trusting that you just want the best for each other. And so I do think it's important for anyone in these areas to do as much training as possible. We can learn from each other, we can learn from the visiting trainers. Having the capacity to reflect on things is the key, though. Otherwise, what we're doing is having a whole lot of the same experiences 50 million times. We're not learning anything. If you go away from everything you do and say, how has that shaped me? What have I learned about myself from that? Why did you like that film and hate that film? Why did you not like that director but really flourished under this director? So we need to be intrigued about the choices and behaviours of others as much as ourselves. But if we don't ask those questions or have some kind of dialogue with someone else, we're just having the same experience over and over again, and we're not deepening, and we really need this deeper knowledge, deeper self-awareness. Some actors will actually say, this is not a good experience for me because of my personal history, because of everything that makes me who I am. I will shelve that for a while, go about other things, and I might have my pleasure in other ways.
So the thing that I'm picking up, I think, a through line for you is very much about self-knowledge and understanding self, and a lot of other things will flow from really a deep understanding of self, whether we want to continue with the path that we're on, what are the other things that we want to try, and how we interact with each other.
And also really basic things, habits, rituals, and that can include burning the candle at both ends, taking on too much, and then being utterly exhausted. I encourage people to say, do what I can, but monitor my energy. Theatre and film is so much about vitality. If you've lost your vitality,
The camera will see it.
you need to look after yourself. So you might say, look, I've been offered all these roles and I want a Gatling gun. Oh, if I say no, they won't ask me again. I've got to say yes. I'd love to do it, but I am very tired after being gouged out over the last play. Take that responsibility. I'm going to respect you more as an actor, and I know that the next time you work with me, you're going to be fresh, ready. So the self-care, but it's also about responsibility to that tribe, is important. Another thing I'm really big on is learning your lines. One of the things I notice with consummate professionals, if they're called for an audition, they'll actually learn some script. And so a whole lot of things are ticked. They don't have to learn everything. It might be just a few paragraphs or one paragraph, but it gives us an idea of how they function. We want to understand that they've thought about the commitment, and so when they say, yes, I can do it, they've really thought it through, because it's like a marriage. It's like a spiritual experience. When you're committed to that play or that film or that undertaking, be fully present, be here now. And if something happens and you can't, please tell us as soon as possible and say, look, I'm struggling, I have to pull out. Can I help you find a replacement? How can I support the rest of the team? It's about being real and honest. And I guess it's understanding that we will be provoked and triggered in ways we'll never realise until it's happening to us. You can do some internal checks. How am I going? What's happening to me? If I'm being provoked, what are the emotions that are being provoked? It's not about you, it's about me. Oh, you remind me of my uncle and I didn't process this. So my irritation is about something else. I need to work on this rather than give you a serve. So again, having the self-awareness and the maturity to be able to do that.
And my self-awareness tells me that I think we're out of time. Meredith, this has been a fantastic and very practical and helpful discussion, and I thank you from the bottom of my heart. It's been really, really great. I've been with Meredith Fuller today. Thank you very much for watching Tete-a-Tete.